Hey everybody, it's Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast, where we know better than to mess with Kendrick Lamar. It's me, your man, MG Marcas Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and LaQuan Jones. And fellas, I know this time of year we get to kind of have some fun, do some things sort of outside the box. And to kind of help us along with that, we got Bucky Brooks, who you can see on NFL Network and in a million other places. Buck, one, we appreciate the time. Two, we were talking about this before the show. How is it that you have the time and energy to do all of the things that you do?
Well, I mean, when I'm not listening to the latest diss tracks from Kendrick and Drake, I find a little time to squeeze in some me time. So no, it's been fun, man. Look, all things ball, look, there are a lot of other things that we could be doing, but like being able to talk about ball, like it doesn't get much better than that.
Very true. So we wanted to get you on because obviously the draft is wrapped up. Mini camps and OTAs and stuff, they're going to be starting up. They have started up in a lot of places already. So kind of wanted to get some of your thoughts on things that have gone on so far and how you kind of project some things. Figured we start at quarterback because why not? Because that was the big talk, especially at the top of the draft. And, we saw Caleb Williams go number one. We saw where Jaden Daniels and Drake May and all these guys went. We know that all the talk about Caleb is that he's a guy who's ready to step in and be maybe the guy for the Bears. But beyond that, are there any quarterbacks in this rookie class that you think are ready to be starters in day one?
I think Jaden Daniels will be a starter from day one. I think when you look at Jaden Daniels going to Washington, given Cliff Kingsbury's history, we've seen what Cliff Kingsbury did. He turned Kyler Murray into the offensive rookie of the year in Kyler Murray's first season. He's familiar with building game plans around a player and an athlete like this at the quarterback position. And with, Jaden Daniels, the difference with him and like Drake May and JJ McCarthy, he enters the league with 55 collegiate starts. Like when everyone is looking for maybe the secret sauce behind Brock Purdy's success, Brock Purdy played almost 50 college games before he entered the league. And look, it's not exactly the same as playing in the NFL, but that experience matters. Those reps matter. Jaden Daniels' reps first at Arizona State, then at LSU, will give him an opportunity to have success immediately in Washington. And then when you throw in the athletic factor, the fact that he can run around and use his legs, that also kind of buys you the opportunity to kind of get on the field right away.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jaden Daniel has some nice weapons around him, and we talked about Cliff Kingsbury last pod, and I'm wondering your thoughts on Luke McCaffrey of his ability to be used under a Cliff Kingsbury's system. I mean, he looks like a complete weapon that you can utilize all over the offense.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because there's been a lot of excitement and buzz about Luke McCaffrey, and normally you don't hear that kind of buzz and excitement over a day 3 pick, but I think some of it is the family business. You think about all the McCaffreys and how many have had success in the National Football League, but then also the opportunity. In that offense, there's an opportunity for him to be able to get on the field and to play and have a role because you can't stop Scary Terry and you can't stop Jahan Doxson without leaving someone in one-on-one coverage. And McCaffrey's shown the ability to put the ball in the paint as a playmaker in the red zone. That offense with Jaden Daniels, the ball can go anywhere, particularly when he leaves the pocket. So that'll give him a chance to be a very impactful performer. I'm not saying he'd be Puka Nacua, but he could carve out a nice role for himself as a rookie.
So I want to ask you about another quarterback. Let's head down to Atlanta. Did the Falcons make the right move getting Michael Penix?
So, this is hard just because the amount of capital that the Atlanta Falcons used to acquire Kirk Cousins first and then Michael Penix. Normally when you see these situations, you talk about a bridge quarterback that is a middling quarterback that is struggling to kind of stay relevant in the league, and then you bring in the hotshot rookie. Well, now you have the most expensive quarterback on the free agent market. The Atlanta Falcons gobble him up, and then they come and use a top 10 pick on Michael Penix. I would say the plan is solid. The execution is faulty just because you simply don't commit those kinds of assets to it. And the only way that they can look right, and look, they really won't look right, but winning solves everything. So if Michael Penix jumps into the mix and plays at a high level, well, then they can say, see, look, he was just so good we couldn't pass him up. Much like Brock Purdy has allowed the Niners to kind of hide from the Trey Lance thing. It just comes down to performance. If Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix plays at a high level, it won't matter. The conversation will be mute.
And speak the big six, when outside of maybe Michael Penix, Do you think we see these guys starting by week 1, by October? Are some going to sit all year? When do you think we see these guys?
So I think the first 3 to start will be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix, respectively. Then I think it's a bit of a roll of the dice when it comes to Drake May and J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix, because J.J. McCarthy is kind of stuck behind the great Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold, like we've heard, I think we're 7 years in, where we talked about this is his year. This is his year. This is his year. Kevin O'Connell is going to dust off. He's finally got the instructions how to play with the toy. And so we're going to see the best version of Sam Darnold in Minnesota. In New England, I think they want to really have a slow cook process with Drake May. Hey, let Jacoby Brissett kind of get beat up until they can build up the offensive line, until they can get the weapons and drop Drake May in maybe week 8, week 9 when he's ready. Michael Penix, we talked about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter. The reason why Bo Nix is in that category, I just believe that Sean Payton subscribes to the I told you so theory. And so he wants to kind of put him in the mix and tell everybody, I told you he was going to be good because I'm the quarterback guru. I can make him work. And so when everyone is talking about Bo Nix not even rating as a first-round talent, I think Sean Payton wants to show the football world, no, he's a first-round talent, and here's why, and this is why we're going to win with him.
You mentioned J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold there in Minnesota. I mean, I feel like McCarthy was one of the more polarizing prospects out there, right? Because, some guys looked at it, some people looked at him and said, well, he was helped by all the talent around him. Some people said, well, he's just a winner and he's smart and he knows what to do. Where do you come down on J.J. McCarthy? Which version of the story are you more leaning toward?
I'm more in the winner guy category. And the only reason I'll say that is because I think J.J. McCarthy was very intentional about his college plans. He was a 4 or 5-star quarterback who could have gone anywhere. And he decided to go to Michigan knowing that Michigan was going to run the football and run it like relentlessly with Jim Harbaugh. And so that decision to do that speaks volumes about who he is in terms of willing to check his ego at the door. From a talent standpoint, he's very talented. I mean, he's a player that can make all the throws in the pocket. He also has the athleticism to add a dimension to the offense. We saw him do that from time to time in Michigan. The one thing that we don't have, and it's not his fault, is the style of play. We don't have many moments where he had to put the entire offense on his back because they were always playing in front. The running game was always kind of thriving. It's rare that we've had to see him in those moments. Doesn't mean that he can't do it. We just don't have any evidence to say, hey, he's going to be this because he did that while he was a collegiate.
I gotta ask, was it really an old documentary that killed Spencer Rattler's draft stock? I mean, this is a guy who was he was a Heisman candidate like a few years ago, right? And all of a sudden, he loses his job to Caleb Williams. He ends up transferring. I mean, what happened with Spencer Rattler, and does he have the skills to be successful in the NFL?
I would say this because it's funny, like watching that kind of play out in the Twitterverse. I will say it didn't help him. I say anyone who watched him on QB1, even though he was a teenager, he was 18. He didn't come off great, and sometimes, man, it's hard to forget those impressions when you're an evaluator. The other thing is everyone is outraged that the NFL would consider something that he did in high school, but that's what they do for all prospects. Like Marcus and you guys, Mike, if y'all were being drafted, your high school coach would get a phone call. He would get a questionnaire, he would get a letter, he would get a phone call. He might even get a visit based on what you may have been involved in high school. That's kind of part of the process as you're trying to learn the player. The bigger thing that hurt Spencer Rattler is, yeah, dude, he got beat out by Caleb Williams quickly at Oklahoma. Like 4 or 5 games in, like they're playing Texas. You look up, you're like, whoa, Spencer Rattler's supposed to be a Heisman candidate, and Caleb Williams is not only in the game, Caleb Williams is leading the Sooners back. So that plays a part. And then when he transferred, he went to South Carolina, and he didn't really light it up. And when you watch his game, I don't know what his superpower is. Like, he doesn't have the arm talent that Caleb Williams possesses. He doesn't run around like Jaden Daniels. Look, he's a solid playmaker in Bo Nix, but Bo Nix is a better physical specimen. So he just kind of gets stuck. Maybe he can do the Brock Purdy thing, because that's why Brock Purdy landed in the 7th round, because he didn't kind of pass all the pageant requirements. So maybe Spencer Rattler is a better player than he is a prospect, just because he plays the game at a higher level than he looks when he walks out on the field.
Yeah, I know he was a guy that, again, like, I think early in draft season his stock sort of dropped. There are people making a case for him that maybe he ends up being of value. I just, I was sort of, I didn't really know what to make of Spencer Rattler, but because again he went from being Heisman candidate to a guy that just kind of fell off the radar was sort of kind of a head scratcher to me. Let's talk some wide receivers. Because it was the position that everybody talked about. Florio, any questions you got about wideouts right now?
Yeah. Look, Bucky, I would ask you about 30 wide receivers in this class if I could, because it's a really deep class, and I liked a lot of the players in it. But have we overrated the depth of this class at all, or is the opposite? Is this class going to surprise us maybe with even some later round breakouts?
I think we've overrated it because the conversation coming out was, hey, this is a deep, talented collection of pass catchers. And it is, but they're different categories for how we put the pass catchers. I would say the top three were different than everybody else. Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, Malik Nabers, they were in a different category. The next person right after that was Brian Thomas Jr. He was the one of the group that remained that had wide receiver one potential. The thing that you didn't know is, okay, it's not as polished as those other guys, but man, the talent is there. I kind of compared him to T. Higgins. You know, how you like T. Higgins. Like T. Higgins, maybe he's a one. We know he's a great two, but maybe he's a one if Jamar Chase isn't there. We just don't know. That's how Brian Thomas looked. But then after that, I think there were a lot of guys who are destined to be role players, and they have to be with the right team, asked to play in the right role to really maximize who they are. So when you think about the Xavier Worthies and the Lad McConkeys and the Ricky Pearsalls and those guys, they're really good players. They could be B+ players, maybe A- players, but it may be A- player in a specific role, not the transcendent player that, hey, we can just drop him in any offense, he's going to have a lot of success. But no, there are a lot of players that will have success. I just don't know if they will be the leading man in their destinated soap opera.
So you mentioned Xavier Worthy, and a guy of his size and his profile, like, could he be super productive with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in that offense? I mean, we got some little distractions going on, all field stuff, with Rice. So I feel like, a bigger workload is maybe on.
That's what we call those things.
Okay. We're now going to rock it.
Yeah. Okay. I think Xavier Worthy is interesting. I wasn't as high on Xavier Worthy as some were coming out of the combine. But now that he's landed with Kansas City, I can see Andy Reid's vision. Remember, everybody sees somebody as kind of like a yesteryear player. So for Andy Reid, this is yesteryear's Deshaun Jackson. Like you could see him sitting in the table like, oh, man, this guy reminds me of D-Jack. He's skinny, he's this and that. Y'all tell me he can, but Deshaun Jackson was able to do. So if he's put in that role, yeah, he can kill it. Now, the issue that you have is, look, man, Rashee Rice was just coming into his own, right? You could kind of envision how they were going to utilize him and whatever. At a minimum, we know he's going to be on the sideline for some suspensions, maybe even more. And so that changes a little bit of the construct of the offense, because now we know Travis Kelce's there, but Travis Kelce is in the twilight of his career, and he can't be the lead horse the entire season. So who feels some of the production that was pegged to go to Rice? I think they still have to figure it out. To me, Xavier Worthy's production will be as the designated big play guy. The guy that some games you'll look up, he got 3 catches for 90 yards because he's had big passes and those things. And then there may be a couple games where he's quiet, 2 for 12, 2 for 15. So to me, he's more of a kind of boom or bust projection in terms of what the production is going to be his first season.
I guess about Malik Nabers, because he was a guy that everybody loved, and at least for fantasy, we saw him go to New York, go to the Giants, and we all kind of got heartbroken a little bit.
Yeah.
Can he elevate Daniel Jones? I mean, look, the targets are going to be there because there's not really a lot of places to go necessarily with the football. Can he elevate Daniel Jones, or is Danny Dimes kind of is what he is? I mean, can he sort of rise above that?
Man. That is, man. That's the thing that everyone, because you love him, you watch him on tape, and you're like, oh, he's so fascinating, whatever. And with the 6th pick, the New York Giants, you're like, no,
right.
no. That said, Brian Daboll is a really good offensive mind. He'll find a way to get him the ball. I think he still can function. And look, maybe he's able to do one of those DeAndre Hopkins type things where it doesn't matter how bad the quarterback is, like he kind of finds a way to continue to produce at a high level. He's really good. And I would say the strength of his game is the ability to make things happen after the catch. And that might be the saving grace. So with the bubble screens, the quick throws, the slants, maybe he's able to kind of tally enough yardage to put up the numbers that you want from a number one receiver.
Bucky, I'm wondering how much, when you're looking at these rookies, is it what you thought coming in? Because I didn't love Keon Coleman as a prospect coming in, but I absolutely love his landing spot. And I'm like, ignore all the Bill stuff behind me. I'm like, Josh Allen with this style of wide receiver could be dangerous. So I guess twofold question, like, how do you balance that landing spot and what you thought of a player? And do you think Keon Coleman could be a good fit with Josh Allen and the Bills?
The yellow jacket got you, huh? The yellow jacket, the puffer got you, the personality. So here's the thing, and here's what you want to do. Like where we are in the media world, like as a scout, you want to be objective. And so you can't be tied to your opinions per se, because a lot of the stuff you're doing is speculating without really knowing where they're going. Well, now once you see where they go, to me, it becomes a much easier eval because you understand where he's going, who he's playing with, and what the plan is, the proposed plan for the player. Well, yeah, Keon Coleman, to me, like, I mean, he ain't a sleeper because everyone knows, but Keon Coleman in Buffalo, he has a chance to be the number one receiver. If he goes somewhere else, he doesn't get a chance to play that role, because now you hear the conversation about Josh Allen basically handpicked him. Oh, I'm going all in on Keon Coleman because Josh Allen has a vested interest in making sure that his handpicked receiver plays. I'll say this, what hurt Keon Coleman in the draft is he didn't run fast at the combine, but you still got to look at the tape and watch what he did at Florida State. This dude is bean topping everybody. He's catching balls everywhere. He's super acrobatic. He's a red zone weapon. And the underrated value when you're looking at wide receivers, find guys that have return ability, because what return ability does is it showcases their ability to run after the catch. Keon Coleman at his size was returning punts for Florida State. That tells me, man, we can get this guy in space. We can do some things. And I didn't make this comparison before, but I'll make it now. He reminds me of Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen was also another guy that was a big guy that returned punts, I think, at Cal a little bit. Keon Coleman may end up having some of that stuff. He's not that route runner now, but, man, if Josh Allen says, I want you, where do you think the ball is going to hit? It's going to head in his direction because everyone wants to be correct.
So now that we know landing spots, outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., which wide receiver do you think will have like year one impact? Like who will have the number one spot out of that rookie class?
The number one spot outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. We already talked about Malik. Okay, I will say this. If you talk about biggest impact, I think Brian Thomas Jr. could have a significant impact. And this is why. In Jacksonville, because everyone, look, last year I've seen Marcus do it on TV, the hype train. Bring it back. The hype train was big on Jacksonville last year. And so because they ran off the tracks, everybody is off of them. I would say this year they're better positioned to do what everyone thought that they would do last year, just because of the talent on the outside. So the best two playmakers on the Jaguars offense are Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. The ball goes to them. Like the coaches have said, that's where the ball is going. Well, now they bring over Gabe Davis, who averaged over 16 yards per catch, had 27 touchdowns in Buffalo. Well, somebody on the other side is also going to get one-on-one coverage, and that's BTJ. And so he gets one-on-one coverage as a vertical stretch player, and he's super fast. So for years, they've had to play half-court basketball because they didn't have the vertical element. Now you have two guys, and you have to think early on, all the attention will be on Kirk and Ingram and then Gabe Davis because they've seen him in the league. That creates plenty of opportunities for Thomas Jr. to have big plays. And so when we talk about impact, I think about impact in terms of explosive plays, catches over 20 yards. To me, he's going to have an opportunity to be well up in that category because he's going to get a lot of one-on-ones, and I think they'll push the ball down the field.
So you talk about that, right? In crowded wide receiver rooms and that sort of thing. And, there was all this chatter that the Niners were going to make a trade at some point, that, they couldn't keep both Debo and Brandon Ayuk. For now, they're both still there. I know they're working on an extension for Ayuk, but they also go out and they draft Ricky Pearsall. Is there space for all three of those guys? Look, I mean, I guess if anybody can sort of scheme it up, it might be Kyle Shanahan, but it feels like it's going to be hard for all three of those guys to really coexist, successfully in that offense.
I think it's a direct reaction to Super Bowl. And without knowing what Debo pulled in the Super Bowl, Kyle Shanahan walked away from that game with a loss, but he also walked away knowing that, man, now that we lost this game like this, everybody's going to play us the same way, meaning everyone's going to play man-to-man against the 49ers, because man-to-man took away the layups that were going to Brock Purdy. That first quarter, when they went up and down the field, they were hitting the middle of the seam or whatever. Kansas City quickly switched to man and said, hey, we got to take away these. And what happened is they found that Debo Samuel couldn't get open against man coverage. Brandon Ayuk didn't get the production. He was getting open, but he didn't get the production. Well, Kyle Shanahan wanted another route runner to fill out the wide receiver core. That's Ricky Pearsall. So now when they play those teams that attempt to play man-to-man, they're going to have more options. Because remember, it wasn't even Kansas City. If you go back and look at Cleveland, Cleveland stopped the Niners offense because they played man-to-man on like 60% of their snaps. Shanahan is anticipating facing more man-to-man. He wanted a route runner. Ricky Pearsall is a route runner. That's why he wanted to take him early. So there's opportunities for all of those guys, but it may be matchup based more so than, hey, just throw out the lineup card. This is how we're going to play.
And Bucky, we've asked you about a lot of wide receivers here, but is there any fantasy sleepers that our listeners maybe should write down for draft season?
Fantasy sleepers. So that means running back, anything. If we can go anywhere on the board.
I was thinking receivers, but you could take it anywhere.
Oh, okay. No. I was just making sure. I just want to make sure I had the proper context. I would say just as an overall fantasy sleeper, I would just keep an eye on Blake Corum with the LA Rams. And the reason why I would keep an eye on Blake Corum, when you look, man, this dude put the ball in the paint. I think 58 rushing touchdowns at Michigan. I'm watching how the Rams are switching over their offense from being more of a zone scheme to a gap scheme. Well, that's exactly what he played in at Michigan. So Sean McVay was able to take someone and say, this guy played in what we're going to do. He's a perfect fit for us. And even though they have Kyren Williams, man, you know how Sean McVay falls in and out of love with running backs. He loves Todd Gurley one moment. Todd Gurley's like, Cam Akers. Oh, Cam Akers, you're my guy. Then I can't find Cam Akers anymore. And so Kyren Williams is the toast of the town. And by week 7, it may be Blake Corum's team. So just keep an eye on Blake Corum being the guy.
I love that answer.
Yep. So this is the part that LaQuan is going to clip later, and he's going to make this a social post. It's gonna be like he's gonna retweet it like 5 times. It's absolutely gonna happen. So let's talk some running backs here. So we talked about the wide receivers. The thing you mentioned is that maybe we got a little bit too hyped on this wide receiver class. On the flip side, everybody was really down on this group of running backs. I, Bucky, have been of the opinion that people were down on them mainly because there weren't one or two guys at the top, right? We didn't have a Bijan Robinson, for instance, in this class. It wasn't like we had Saquon Barkley or whatever in this group. Have we underrated the depth of this running back class, or is it really just not great?
There's not, I would say there's not that star player. So it's not so much that everyone was devaluing them. I don't think anyone merited what Bijan was. And I think anyone can look at Bijan and see Bijan as a rookie and just see, oh man, this talent that he has is different. I would say that the players that were in this class are more situational playmakers, guys that need to play a specific role. They're not guys that can handle the entire obligation that normally comes along with being the workhorse. And so it's going to be really important that you find the right guys that fit into the role that is going to really work well for them. I talked about Blake Corum, like he's a great fit. I think Will Shipley's in a great place, even though it's a little different with Saquon Barkley being there. Will Shipley's in a nice thing because he's Christian McCaffrey light in terms of like how he plays. And in an offense that will use the running back in a few different ways, he's going to have a lot of success. But I can say the same thing about Isaac Guerrero for the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers. Like he's going to be a guy that is going to have an opportunity to play in those things. So it's really kind of shaking the bushes and looking at the fits to find the running back that could surprise, even though on the surface coming into the league, there wasn't anyone that you were wowed about.
So we talked about some of these running backs, and Trey Benson is a guy that I absolutely love. But who is a guy that you just saw the landing spot? You say, okay, yeah, he's going to be able to produce and have a bright future there.
Yeah, no. So and talking about it, like Corum is obviously one. Shipley is another one that you just kind of talk about. Like, man, that appears to be a really good fit. Trey Benson in Arizona is interesting because he has an opportunity to be the young guy in the backfield, and there's something to that. James Conner's played for a long time. Like he's been the guy for a minute, but
yeah,
young, dynamic, being able to kind of have an opportunity to do it. Yeah, those guys are fascinated. But I think, man, this one is like, it's really about digging deep, because the problem with this running back class is we had a free agent class that none of us expected, right? We didn't expect the free agents to get paid. We didn't expect Josh Jacobs to end up in Green Bay. Like, we just kind of thought they all would be sent out to pasture, and that's it. No more old running backs. But now you have these guys doing it. I mean, shoot, Zeke Elliott's come back. He come back and he's acting like he's going to be the feature player. I was like, wait a minute, 2 years ago, we were ready to get rid of him. So I think some of these young guys are hamstrung by their situations where it may take a while for them to really pop. It might be a year where we have to turn back the clock and lean on a bunch of older guys early until those young guys can kind of separate from the pack.
So, I mean, real quick about that, that's not making me feel better about Marshawn Lloyd. I wanted him to go to a great place, Bucky. He goes to Green Bay. I think he's a really talented guy, but he's stuck behind Josh Jacobs. I mean, it feels like this is just, at least for the next 2 years, he's probably just stuck, right?
It seems like that, right? Because like when we've seen the way they played Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, there's not enough evidence to say that Matt LaFleur knows how to fully maximize two running backs that can play. You know, like it was always, hey, Aaron Jones, you do all of the work, and A.J. Dillon will throw you in every now and then and kind of get it done. With Josh Jacobs, you know, he loves the heavy workload. He did it with the Raiders. He can catch it out the backfield. So you don't have these clear lines where you can say, okay, he's going to play this role and Marshawn is going to play that other role. But the one thing we know about running backs, man, sprained ankle, bruise here, there, it gives guys an opportunity. It's murkier than we've seen at the position than in previous years.
And the one that everyone kind of thought would be the RB1 in this class, Jonathan Brooks, obviously suffering the season-ending injury in college. But Ian Rappaport, after he got drafted, was like, no, they expect him to be ready in July. So, Bucky, what are your expectations for Jonathan Brooks in year one?
I think it's hard to really have high expectations. One, normally, I know people come back from an ACL, but normally it takes 2 years before you're really settled in. And so to think that he's going to come off of the ACL, jump right into the mix and be the guy. And also they have Miles Sanders there. They still have some other running backs there. I would think that they would probably be fairly conservative in their approach. If he plays, man, maybe he does some stuff down the stretch like the last half of the season, but it's hard to count on that. I expect him to play. He's super talented. He has a lot of ability. It's just a matter of he's going to be healthy enough to kind of handle the responsibility of being a guy that gets in the mix and plays a lot.
So the fantasy streets are buzzing right now around Kamani Vidal going to the Chargers, and they already have a 1-2 punch with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So the fantasy streets are thinking or leaning on the side that he may have a larger role, or should we just be worried that, they already have a larger mouths to feed there?
No, because I think with J.K. Dobbins, you got to treat him. If we're playing spades, you got to treat J.K. Dobbins as a possible. You can't count that book. You don't know if he's going. Like, you can't count it. Like if it works, it works. But so now it's a situation with Gus Edwards and Vidal. And I would say this: watching him, super productive at Troy. I mean, just like a go-getter. Like you see him handle a heavy workload. He kind of has the right temperament. And the one thing that we know about Jim Harbaugh, he's going to run the football. The other thing that we'll know just by looking at Michigan, he's going to do it with multiple running backs. He did it up there. Even though they had Blake Corum, they had another running back, Donovan, that could make it happen. So, yeah, I would be okay with that. I would keep an eye on him. I think you stash him and you just kind of wait and see how it plays out. but he's certainly going to get an opportunity because one thing we know, he is going to run the football. He said it. You can continue to believe him or not believe him, but they are going to run the football. And I will say this. The last time the Chargers, like going way back, had a mentality at the top of the team that was like Jim Harbaugh was Marty Schottenheimer. Look up LT's stats then. Look at the amount of touchdowns that LT was putting up back then. And they were a running team, and he had everybody. He had a quarterback. He had Phillip Rivers. He had Drew Brees, and they still ran the football. So for me, I am more intrigued by that because he is going to try and establish the team's mentality, and they're going to run the football. So all those guys in the backfield are going to be viable options.
I mean, I go back to even at Stanford, he had Andrew Luck and he ran the football. I mean,
that's what he does. Like he had us thinking that Toby Gerhardt was like a real dude, like a high end dude. So they're gonna run the football. So yeah,
absolutely.
But all being there is someone of interest for sure.
Greg Roman's offense running a lot. I'm not sure.
that's new.
You know?
I gotta ask you about tight ends because we all love Brock Bowers. He goes to the Raiders. Does this mean they gave up on Michael? Because I like Michael Mayer too. I mean, the dude had a great career at Notre Dame. Does this mean they've given up on Michael Mayer, or are they going to actually try to run two tight ends out there now?
No, I think they're going to run two tight ends. I think this was a situation where you hear this time of year, best player available. He was the best player available. I think some teams had him rated as a top 5 player on the board. The Raiders get to him. The quarterback's not there because there was an assumption that if Michael Penix was there, he was going to be their guy. So Penix is off the board. So now you have Brock Bowers staring you right there. And you're like, oh, my goodness. Like, how great is this? I think what they will have an opportunity to do is people call 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. And what that does is it'll balance out the way the defense has to play. It changes the coverages that you can see. So it will not only kind of open up the field for like Michael Mayer, it may open up the field for Devontae Adams because it's harder to double team with 2 tight ends on the field. The problem, do we really believe that Gardner Minshew is going to be able to be the quarterback to do it? And people get excited about Gardner Minshew, but I remember there are a lot of games where he had 150 or so yards for the Indianapolis Colts, and they won in spite of, not because of. And so that's the situation. Who is going to be the guy that's throwing it? Because Bowers can be as talented as anybody, but can the quarterback get him the ball? That's the $1 million question with the Raiders.
And when we were talking about tight ends at draft season, it felt like Brock Bowers was the only one. But there's some other guys like Ben Sinnott, Jatavion Sanders, Eric All. Is there any tight end now that we know landing spot that you think could have a year 1 impact?
Jatavion Sanders, just because he goes to Carolina. Drew Canales is going to make sure that he does everything in his power to fix the quarterback. So Bryce Young, they've upgraded the pieces around him. Deontay Johnson coming over. You still have Adam Thielen. You have weapons that can move the needle. Well, someone has to be able to control the middle of the field. That's where Saunders comes in. He comes in and does it because that's what he did at Texas. He dominated right down the seams. It's an easy throw for the quarterback. He's the guy that I would kind of peg as, hey, let's keep an eye on him because his production could be through the roof his first year.
I'm actually on the clock. I'm going to be drafting him next. Good luck, Bucky.
This dude's drafting right now. Buck, man, we appreciate the time, appreciate the insights. I know you and DJ still doing Move the Sticks. What else you got going on?
Yeah, Move the Sticks. So we got that going. We're on a little week vacation. DJ's all tired from the draft, so we're gonna take some time off. Then we'll get back together and kind of start digging into it in the summer. So look, man, it's all fun. This is the fun time of year because the hard part is guessing where guys are going to go. Mm-hmm. Now that you see them, this is the fun part, being able to kind of get excited when the schedule comes out, hopefully next week, get a chance to kind of peg when guys are going to make those major jumps. So I'm enjoying this part of it.
I got to ask you about that too when the schedule comes out. I know there's kind of been this thing about the post-bye rookie bump. Is that really a thing? Do rookies sort of like take a jump in your experience after having a bye week?
Sometimes, because you got to remember, so like physically, these guys have not had a break. I mean, look, since before the summer of their final seasons, because the way that the schedule goes, like they go from playing to then all-star games to combine to mini camps to playing. So that week bye is the first time that they'll be able to take a deep breath and kind of just chill out for a bit. So yeah, like they kind of can get their sea legs back, kind of figure out, oh, what am I doing? Because it's been a whirlwind. That first year playing in the league is kind of chaotic because you just don't know what is going on. So yeah, that's your work.
Definitely something to keep in mind, sure, as we go through the season. Bucky, appreciate you, man. Let's talk again soon.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, Bucky Brooks there. And that'll do it for us, by the way. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We got the cheat sheet for you coming up tomorrow. We appreciate everybody who's been jumping in on that as well. So look for that live streaming on YouTube. In the meantime, that'll do it for this edition of the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast for LaQuan Jones, Michael and Florio, Marcas Grant. Stay happy, safe, and healthy. Do good and live well. Happy drafting, everybody. Talk to you again real soon.